We've been taught to approach food and fitness as if one size is supposed to fit us all. Eat less, move more, be consistent, don't miss workouts, ignore cravings. But women's bodies don't operate the same way every day the way men's typically do. Our hormones shift across the month. Energy, hunger, sleep, even motivation change. Yet, most advice ignores that. So when we can't stay consistent, what do? We blame ourselves. Today I'm joined by Sarah Boyd, certified personal trainer, nutrition and lifestyle coach, women's health coach, and the author of The Habit Revolution, to rethink food, fitness, and what consistency actually means for women. Because maybe the problem was never you, it was the plan. I'm Camille, and this is Kind of Bold. Sarah, I am so excited about this conversation today. I grew up in France, and people are really preoccupied with their appearance, to say the least. There's this culture that you have to fit within this certain mold in terms of what you eat, how you exercise, what you look like. And I restricted my food intake for the longest time. I never exercised because no one actually ever said to me that you had to exercise for your health. Exercise was to lose weight or maintain your weight. I'm sure you see this with a lot of your clients, actually.
Definitely have. I would say with clients coming into the gym, especially women, the resounding goal that they have when they come in is weight loss, especially with social media right now. We're always looking on our phones and we're always looking at the best sides of people where, AI is really present. So who knows whether these bodies have been shifted, but we are as a society very fixated on how we look. And that's starting to change, but coming through the 90s and early 2000s, it's definitely a Vogue has really presented that we need to be thin.
Do you see that equally in men and women, or is it more prominent in women?
I would say it's more prominent in women. That doesn't mean that a man doesn't come into the gym with a weight loss goal. However, it might not be the first thing that they say. It might be, I want to put muscle on, I need to be stronger, I want to get out of pain, and I'd like to lose the weight along the way, where women will be, I want to be this weight, I want to lose this much weight, and yes, I want to build muscle and bone density along the way as well. I think it's just very ingrained in us from a young age. I mean, men never wore girdles to make their waist tighter underneath dresses. Like, this has been something from society that is centuries ingrained in us.
I recently discovered that contrary to men who stay relatively consistent every day, women are not the same throughout the month.
Oh.
And it's primarily due to our menstrual cycle. And it's mind-blowing how no one had ever told me about the 4 menstrual phases. Maybe it's just me. Maybe women know, but I feel like there's not enough education about this. And I had, for example, never heard of the word follicular or luteal until about a few months ago. Can you give us a bit of a 101 as to what those 4 phases are and why they're so important in approaching nutrition and fitness?
Yes, definitely. So women, we have a few hormones that fluctuate through the month, but our main hormone that really differentiates us from men is estrogen. And so estrogen cycles through the month. It's easy to tell when you're starting your cycle. That's day 1 of your period if you have one. And so that's our menstruation phase. It is technically the start of our follicular phase as well. So in menstruation, we typically will feel lower energy. We're a little bit more moody. And if you think about it, one of our major organs is literally shedding. Like, it's a major thing is happening in our body. Our body needs a lot of rest in order to repair that and get ready for the next month ahead. Once you finish your menstruation, you're, deeper into that follicular phase now where estrogen is still rising. As estrogen rises, we start to feel more energy. We start to feel more outgoing and more like ourselves. The follicular phase ends with our ovulation phase. And so this is where our estrogen is highest and our body is preparing to have an egg be fertilized. If an egg does not get fertilized within that 1 to 3 day window, then we go into our luteal phase where our estrogen starts dropping and our progesterone starts rising. And so as that estrogen goes down and progesterone rises, we start to feel a little bit more fatigue. We're not as good at dealing with stress. We will feel that energy goes down, that mood goes down, and that luteal phase will take us right until the end of our cycle when our hormones are at their lowest again, and then we start again with that menstrual phase.
That sounds complicated if this is the first time that you hear it, right? How do you track these phases And how do you stay connected to each moment of your cycle?
So that's definitely something that takes practice. Growing up as a high level athlete, I really saw the phases. I saw when I had that fatigue and when I felt
Ah.
good. And I felt it when I went into competition in different phases of my cycle. And so it's something that once I learned about it, I was able to apply. But if you haven't had that experience, that's where tracking can really come in handy. If you do have a period, that's the easiest way to tell when your cycle is restarting. However, if you're on birth control and you're not getting that cycle, that's what we call a medically induced period. It's a little bit harder to tell, and that's where cycle trackers come in really handy. And so a
Mm.
cycle tracker isn't just based on when your period, it's based on your energy and your mood as well. Those are two of the biggest factors we can use to see how we're feeling. Learning to listen to your body when it's whispering to you in terms
Mhm.
of paying attention to our mood and our energy levels through the month versus waiting until something our body is screaming at us and something is really going wrong. So we have to pay attention to it.
Mm. You said when you were competing, you felt different throughout the month, and then later on, you learned about all of that. But did you
Mm.
ever feel, is there something wrong with me? Because personally, for the longest time, I thought there was something wrong with me for not feeling the same all the time. Like, we are so conditioned to be consistent throughout the month in terms of energy levels, in terms of output. And if there's days you're feeling off, it's like, it's my fault.
Yeah. For sure there is. And, growing up as an athlete and as someone who grew up with brothers and always was wanting to compete against the boys, it was great until I was 14. And that's when puberty hit.
Uh,
And there's a moment I remember very clearly because it was just so out of the norm for me. I was 15 or 16 years old, and at swim practice, we had to do a 400-meter times event in practice. And our coach told us ahead of time that if he didn't think we went hard enough, he was going to make us get up on the block and repeat it. So for those who don't know swimming, 400-meter race is going to take between, 4.5 minutes to 6 minutes. But I got in the water and I just didn't have it. My energy was low. And sure enough, when I finished that 400-meter timed, my name was on that list of people who had to get up on the block and repeat it again. And so I got up on the block and I was crying before I even hit the water off that dive. And it was awful. It was way slower than the first one. And I cried through the whole thing and I finished and my coach pulled me out of the water and he said, "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I thought you just didn't try hard enough. So I wanted you to get
oh,
up there."
wow.
And for me, like he knew I did try on the first one because I was crying and I was someone who was never crying. But for me, it was the frustration of I did put my best effort into that first one that I did, but I just didn't have it today. And I wish I could go back and rewind time and know exactly where I was on my cycle
Mm.
because I am willing to bet that I was in that luteal phase of my cycle.
Hmm.
I just think it represents very much how we feel as women, where we try our hardest, but it's sometimes not good enough. The output isn't
Exactly.
there or the result isn't good enough. And we get up on the block and we do it again, but it's even worse that time. And then we're crying or we're feeling bad or we're feeling like there's something wrong with us when really it's just our cycle.
Is it basically, all right, that's how it is? Or is there anything we can do in terms of how we eat, how we exercise, how we sleep? How do we adapt to each phase of our cycle?
It's a great question because I find women when they come in, either say, I start a lot of things, but I never finish them. Well, you probably
Mm.
start the things when you're feeling great in your follicular phase. And then as you get tired, it's like, well, I have too many things going, things have to drop. As we go into that luteal phase, our energy is going to be lower. So if we know we're going to have lower energy and we have to get this project done, what I see women turn to are increase the coffee, skip meals, and work longer. And those are the three worst things that you can do. One, because caffeine is an appetite suppressant. So if you're having coffee, of course you're not going to feel hungry when you're having that two, three, fourth coffee of the day. And then we skip meals. Maybe we have that aesthetic goal that we talked about earlier, but our brain needs carbohydrates to function. So if we know that we're feeling low energy and our brain's not working as well, you need those carbohydrates to keep the brain functioning. Carbohydrates are the quickest energy that we can get into our body. So that doesn't mean go have a piece of cake, but it could be, grab an apple, grab something that's high in that quick, healthy sugar that's going to give your brain a little boost instead of turning to coffee that's going to suppress your appetite and give you a false sense of energy. The other one that I do recommend is going to bed a little bit earlier if you can, and really prioritizing your sleep when you're in that late luteal phase. I typically find that I do go to bed about 30 minutes earlier in certain phases of my cycle because I just feel more tired. And so that's something that I do in order to help give my body the rest and recovery that it needs throughout that phase of the cycle.
Okay, so I'm hearing less coffee, more sleep, a little bit more carbohydrates,
Hmm.
and that's for the second half of the cycle, right? Do
Correct.
you attend to the second half only, or is there anything you can do throughout the month? And like, can you walk us through from the moment you get your period to that follicular phase, luteal, etc.? How do you adapt? How can you do it in a way that's kind of easy and intuitive without having to log food and track calories and all of that?
What I use with clients is you don't need 4 plans for your 4 phases. You need one gym plan, you need one nutrition plan, and you need the knowledge on how to adapt those throughout the different phases of your cycle. So let's dive into that. We're going to start with menstruation. We want to think about repairing and restoring function. So this is where we need rest. We need to let our body do what it's doing of shedding that uterine lining, which does take a lot of effort. So first thing, you want to make sure that you keep your hydration up. Every bodily function that we do involves water. And often when we're going through that, we don't feel like drinking water, especially if it's winter. We want to stay warm, and a lot of women find when they drink a lot of water, it makes them feel cold, which makes sense. So, that water could come in forms of a warm herbal tea in order to get that hydration in so that it helps shed that lining with less cramps. When it comes to food, you're going to want warming comfort food. So, looking for soups or stews, things that are warm and hearty are going to make you feel comfortable, making sure that we're keeping our protein up. And if you can, proteins or vegetables that are higher in iron to help replenish the iron that we are missing from our blood that month. At the start, when we're ridding our body of that excess estrogen and trying to restart, we really want to focus on cruciferous vegetables that are going to help with that diet. Cruciferous vegetables would be broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cabbage and things like that. There's a long list of them. For exercise, typically the first 1 or 2 days, if you want to keep that exercise a little bit lighter, especially if you're someone who experiences a lot of cramping or a lot of like physical discomfort, walking is really great to help move things through, but it might not be your best day to go and do sprints on the treadmill or sprints outside.
Okay.
Once we get deeper into the follicular phase and as our estrogen starts rising, we're going to start to feel good. So this is your best time. If you're looking to try a new activity, this is the best time to do it because we're trying to try new things and do harder things. When it comes to food, we want to think of food that's going to support that high energy. But we also want to think of foods that are a little bit lighter so that when you go to do those things, you're not feeling like you're weighed down by the food in your stomach. So this is a great time for a lot of fruits, a lot of vegetables, a lot of lean proteins in our diet. So if I'm in my follicular phase here, I'm eating chicken and fish more than, say, a fatty steak or ground beef that I might have
Oh,
later in my cycle. As we get to ovulation is when we feel our best. This is where we are, at our peak. The way our hormones are when we're at that ovulation is it does leave us at a little bit more of a risk for injury when we factor in that we're also going to be at our highest energy. So this is definitely not a time to skip a proper warm up and cool down. And I did learn that the hard way. And I know exactly where I was at my point in my cycle when I tore my ACL. It was during an ovulation phase. I was already following cycle syncing, and I hopped into a rec soccer game without any warm up whatsoever. Once we go into our luteal phase, estrogen is dropping and our progesterone is increasing. This is where we start to feel a little bit more sensitive to stress and we start to see cravings really increase. And so if you're coming off of the follicular phase where you're feeling great as that progesterone starts increasing, we're holding a little bit more water weight. So we're thinking, oh, I'm adding weight on. I feel a little bit more bloated. So I'm going to restrict down my carbohydrates. Well, then you're amping yourself up to have really bad cravings later on in the month. So as I start my luteal phase, I make sure to prep my food that's going to be high in fiber to help my body get rid itself of that excess estrogen. But things like lentils and beans that are warm foods that are high in fiber and also the healthier versions of carbohydrates are great things to incorporate in this luteal phase. And it's also going to be something that's going to satisfy those cravings where we want warm comfort food at that point in time. In the luteal phase, we can still perform, but we might not feel like we have the energy to perform. So sometimes I get myself to the gym by saying, okay, I just have to do this part of my workout, and that's it. When we look at sleep through the cycle, we need the most sleep when we're in our luteal phase because that's where we're going to feel the lowest energy. And so that's where I say, well, we always should go to bed within the same hour of each other. If I'm going to bed at 9 or 9:30 in my follicular phase, in my luteal phase, I'm looking at 8:30 to 9 o'clock is usually where I'm heading to bed. And even if that's, turning off the lights and reading a book, I might not actually be falling asleep earlier, but I'm doing activities that are supporting that central nervous system and helping my body deal with higher levels of stress.
Wow, what you said about cravings feels so validating. There's so many women who have cravings just before their periods, and I used to feel like I was failing at, staying in control, resisting certain foods that I knew or that I thought were bad, quote unquote, for me. Do you see that a lot with your clients, the way they feel just before their periods and the guilt that is associated with it?
It definitely, yeah, for sure. It's really hard to get away from as women. And especially as you go through perimenopause, because you still have your cycle, but it becomes a lot more unpredictable. The only predictable thing in perimenopause is how unpredictable your hormones are. One day you could have really high estrogen, and the next day you could have really low estrogen. And so it's
I know this.
yeah, you experienced it, right? And so
Yeah.
that's where listening to your body and really tuning into how you feel in perimenopause is even better in order to do that. And so for myself, I do know that I am going to get cravings in my luteal phase. So I always make sure to buy a dark chocolate with sea salt bar, and I have a couple squares at night because I know I'm going to want it. And
Is
dark
it isn't there
chocolate,
caffeine in it? Or
I
maybe
don't, it's not
not?
like I'm eating the whole chocolate bar. Like I'm talking the
Okay.
lint, like those lint
Oh,
bars that
sorry.
have, what, they have 12 squares
Okay.
in them, I think. Yeah.
So that's actually a great point. What is moderation, right? Because you talked earlier about how we need more carbs to fuel our bodies during the luteal phase. Does it mean that we can have like a
Mhm.
big bowl of pasta before bed? Like, what do you mean by having more carbs?
So it's more comforting carbohydrates. So if I'm looking at in my follicular phase and I want to be go, go, go all the time, my carbohydrates would be coming from a lot of vegetables, a lot of fruits, things that are easily digestible, whole grains. When I look at the carbohydrates that I'm going to have in my luteal phase, I'm going to buy a lentil pasta. I really focus on beans and
Mm.
legumes in it because you get a lot of really great fiber that's going to help your body digest. But beans and lentils are also heavy and they're comforting. They satisfy those cravings that you get. Spaghetti is a great one. So you can have spaghetti in your luteal phase, but you still need to have protein in it. So instead of having a spaghetti that's just a white refined carbohydrate, I go out and I buy the red lentil pasta, where I'm getting a more equal value of protein and carbohydrates in that, but it's also those carbs that we want to eat. Our metabolism does ramp up a little bit in the luteal phase. And I say a little bit because it's only about 100 to 200 calories a day. It's not an entire
Okay.
cake that I'm able to
Okay.
eat. And when
Okay.
you factor in what 100 calories of carbohydrate looks like, that's 25 grams of carbohydrates. You're going to get that in a slice or two of bread, depending on what kind of bread buying. And so this
Mm.
is where reading nutrition labels can be really good just to learn. Look at what a serving size is. I know that having a serving of dark chocolate that has a lot of antioxidants, that's going to give my body magnesium that it actually needs in the luteal phase is a good thing. But I'm taking those 3 squares, that's a serving size, and the 18 grams of carbohydrates, and I'm taking those to bed with me to eat while I'm reading my book. I'm not taking the whole chocolate bar because then I'll eat all 12 squares. And now I'm looking at 60 to 70 grams of carbohydrates right before bed that I don't need.
Mm.
In general, and it really does vary, the protein requirement that we look at is around 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And having a balanced diet, that means that the carbohydrates will be around the same as well. So, throwing out general numbers here, a 150-pound woman needs approximately 150 grams of protein and 150 grams of carbohydrates throughout the day in order to sustain their body um, in a way that's healthy without restricting one major food groups. If you know you're going to have cravings, then account for that craving. Large amounts of carbohydrates before we go to bed aren't great. They just really
Mm.
aren't, right? Carbohydrates are quick fat, quick energy, and we don't need quick energy as we're winding down for the evening.
Sleep is such a fragile equilibrium for me at the
Hmm.
moment. You said that we need more sleep during the luteal phase. About a week before my period, sleep goes out the window, right? Like I wake
Definitely.
up at 2, 3 a.m., stare at the ceiling for hours, can't go back to sleep. Is there an explanation to that? And what can we do to improve our sleep at a time of the month when we need it the
Hmm.
most, essentially?
It definitely is common. And if you're experiencing hot flashes, you'll probably notice that your hot flashes also increase in that ovulation to luteal phase as well. Our body temperature increases when we're in our luteal phase. And so, in order to get into that deep sleep, our body temperature drops about a degree. And so, if you're in your luteal phase and your temperature is naturally increasing, it makes sense that our sleep would take a toll because we're not able to get our body temperature down low enough to where what we need in order to get into that deep sleep. So what I recommend are making sure that you're in a cool, dark room. Maybe crack that window open a little bit if you're comfortable and it's not -40 outside. But making sure that you're dropping your house temperature down at night can help it to help get your body temperature down. Also, things like taking a warm bath before bed, or I know sauna, if you have a sauna or access to one, can be really good. When we actively bring our body temperature up right before bed, our body works to start decreasing that body temperature. And it doesn't necessarily stop at your normal body temperature. So, if I take a really hot bath before bed, my body is going to automatically start working to lower my body temperature. And if I get out of that bath and right into bed in a cool, dark, quiet room, well, my body temperature doesn't necessarily stop right where it's, at normal. It's going to keep decreasing because that system is already turned on. So that can be one way that will help.
Good to know. Yeah, I would have thought that having a hot shower just before bed would be counterintuitive. I will definitely try that. So many of us give up. I don't know if I want to use that word give up, but like have a hard time staying consistent with our nutrition and workout, and we feel
Mhm.
guilty after a week of eating healthy, and then we just go back to ordering takeout or skipping workouts. How do you redefine consistency in a way that actually works for women and their cycles?
Mhm. So, we're going to start across the board with habit building. The reason so many people fail at setting new habits is they just try to change too much at one time. They try to go for that
Mm.
biggest, shiniest thing. And so when I'm running a habit workshop, we look at what are the habits we want to instill. Now let's break it down. What is the smallest action that you could do that still supports that habit? And when it comes to consistency, the habits don't have to look exactly the same throughout the month. So I'm going to use a specific goal. I'm going to exercise 3 times a week. And as we look at our cycle throughout the month, that is 12 workouts throughout the month. Our body doesn't know the difference between if I'm feeling really good in my follicular phase and I'm actually going to do 4 workouts
Oh.
in a week in my follicular phase because I feel great, which just means in the last 2 weeks of my cycle, I only need to get 4 total workouts in. When I have less energy, I'm still following my plan and getting my 12 workouts in throughout the month. Consistency in exercise means moving your body every day. And that could be taking my dog out for a walk. That could mean I'm going to turn on YouTube on my TV and I'm going to do a 10-minute mobility session before I go to bed instead of my gym that day. So my body expects to be moved, but it doesn't need to be moved in the exact same way every day.
And you talked about the importance of lifting weights. Can you get into that a little bit? Because I feel like doing cardio, running, like doing workout that makes you sweat profusely is like so overrated. And the latest advice that I hear that women should be lifting weights,
Hmm.
especially in midlife.
Definitely. So humans start to lose muscle mass around the age of 30. That's when it starts. And so as women, we have less muscle mass than men. And so we're starting from a lower level, right? It's not like we're losing muscle faster. We're losing at a similar rate, but we have less muscle mass to begin with. So that loss that's happening, even if it was at the exact same rate of men, is going to hit us a little bit more. And women in the past, whenever we look at, okay, we need to lose weight, we were given advice that men would do. Well, let's add more cardio. Let's put yourself into a caloric deficit, which you need to do to lose weight. And let's really, tighten things up. And so for women, when we're losing our estrogen or we have that uneven estrogen, our cortisol levels are more sensitive. And so when we wake up in the morning, cortisol is naturally high. It's supposed to be. That's what helps us wake up. But if we skip a meal, food helps to decrease that cortisol level. So skipping meals is actually increasing your cortisol level. And as women who are already dealing with the high cortisol as we're going through our midlife, through perimenopause, then it's having an even bigger effect on it. So what we need to do through midlife in order to lose weight is we actually need to lift heavier weights. We need to focus on building muscle. Every pound of muscle burns an extra 50 calories per day. So you can go to the gym and do cardio to burn calories, or you could put muscle on that's going to burn calories throughout the day when you're not working on it whatsoever. It also helps to increase our bone density, which we know does take a hit as we get older. And it's also something that will help to decrease our cortisol levels.
This changes my perception of working out so much. There's a quote from your book, The Habit
Okay.
Revolution, that I absolutely love. It says, movement should be a love letter to your body, not a punishment for what you ate or a chore to earn your rest. Sarah, I wish you'd been in my life when I was younger.
I think we
Because
all needed that.
I have been approaching exercise as something that I either really don't want to do or something that balances the amount of food that I eat, as opposed to something that my body needs to thrive. There is still to this day so much out there, so much on social media about exercising to lose weight and maintaining a certain figure. How can we change that? What would be a message to women about the importance of moving their bodies as a way to live a healthy life?
Oh, I think that comes from a lot of different angles we have to look at. There is a chapter, I start my book actually with a chapter, which I think you got that quote from, about unlearning what we learned when we were younger. Because our generation, I grew up with my parents watching them do the Atkins diet to lose weight. Like they didn't, I mean, it's not a great example to set, but they didn't do it knowing that, right? They were trying to keep themselves healthier. So what you don't know, you don't know. And so now we're coming into a time where we have the knowledge. Every exercise we do in the gym, whether we're squatting or deadlifting or bench pressing, they're called primal movements. And they're called primal movements because they're things that we do all day, every day. Sitting on the toilet, that's a squat. You want to be able to do that independently at 80 to 85 years old. Well, you need to train your hips, your knees, and your legs to be able to continue to do that motion.
Oh, wow.
And if we back up 100 years ago, they weren't going to gyms and exercising 100 years ago. They didn't need to. They were working the farm fields. They were out being a lot more active and using their body in a way that it was designed to do. But we fast forward and we're now living in a society where everything is at our fingertips. From this chair right here, I could do everything I needed to on a daily basis except for move my body. And so now I do need to intentionally exercise. And it's not intentionally exercising to burn fat. It's giving your body what it needs in terms of what it was designed to do. I was designed to squat. I was designed to lift things up off the floor, to reach up over my head. I was designed to use my joints and use my body in specific ways that today's society doesn't do. So we have to go to the gym. So we have to exercise. We have to actively keep our body doing it. Motion is lotion. And if you don't use it, you lose it. Look at what kids can do. They can sit in that low squat. They can crawl. There's always like 1 week in my clients' programming where I make them do bear crawls on the ground and just crawling around on their hands and their knees or their hands and their feet. And everyone hates it, like absolutely hates it. But it used to be so easy for us. And as we've aged, we've stopped being able to do those primal movements that our bodies were designed to do. So don't think of exercise as something to go and burn body fat. Think of it trying to regain your body's mobility. So it's not just cardio and strength training. It's cardio to keep your heart healthy. It's strength training to build muscle mass, which is going to help us build bone density, that's going to keep our joints strong. It's mobility work, which is making sure that our joints are able to, get the right amount of flexion and extension in them to support these primal movements, and flexibility. So a lot of people don't know the difference between mobility and flexibility. Flexibility is stretching your body's ability, your muscles' ability to stretch to a certain distance. Mobility focuses more on the joints. So yes, I can stretch my hamstring, but if I don't work on that mobility in my knee, it doesn't matter how much I stretch my hamstring because my knee is still not going to be able to function properly. So there's a lot of different aspects of it. And so, whether you're someone who loves I love going to the gym. I love lifting weights. I always have. I love the calluses on my hands. I think they're badges of honor. And I think that more women should be proud of these calluses we get because it
Well, I'm not showing you
shows.
my hands then because there are definitely no calluses.
Yeah. So, and that's okay. And I know a lot of women like lifting gloves. You don't have to have calluses, but for me, I've worked hard. I've earned these. Why is it something in society that men have big, rough hands and us women, we should have dainty, soft hands, right?
Oh, yeah.
There's little things like that that are ingrained in our society.
It was so interesting to realize that essentially working out is using our bodies in the way that it was always intended to
Mhm.
operate. It's
Yeah.
not make work, it's not a chore, it's we need to move because, like you said, we're just sitting all day. Everything's at our fingertips.
Mhm.
Never thought of it that way. So, if one of our listeners is like, okay, I would love to do this, but I don't have time to go to the gym, or I don't have a
Mhm.
gym nearby, or I can't afford the gym, um, where do we start? Like, is there something simple that we can have at home that doesn't cost a lot of money to get us started?
You don't need anything to exercise.
Okay.
When we're looking at moving our bodies, we can do it without anything at all. And so walking is a great way to do that. If you live in Canada and you've been dealing with these sub freezing temperatures lately, maybe, a treadmill might help, or walking pads even have really dropped in price. They're only a couple $100s now and they're super slim. They slide under couches and things like that. But at the end of the day, you can do a lot of work just through body movement or through body weight exercises. And we call them exercise snacks. So it's something where I'm going to brush my teeth and I'm going to do 10 squats and 10 lunges while I brush my teeth. Well, you're using your muscles to their capacity. You're stretching, contracting the hamstrings, the quads, glutes. And YouTube is a really great resource as well. So I have videos up on YouTube, Sarah, the health coach. There's a few other people that I really like that give mobility or flexibility routines, but it really only needs to be 10 minutes at a time. And so exercise takes energy to do, but it's also something that builds energy. So one of the recommendations I do for people, if their reason they're not exercising is they're just too tired, we'll start with 10 minutes. Go for a walk for
Okay.
10 minutes. 10 minutes is enough time to get the serotonin, the endorphins in your brain going that might make you feel like you have the energy to do it, or help get you out of that low energy mood that might not be a physical low energy state. Tom Merrick on YouTube is someone I really like. No equipment necessary on there, and it's just mobility, and he's challenging your joints in ways that we don't do in our daily life. And I love to do them. It's low energy, it's really easy. I do it on my living room floor. It's always at night, and I just put it up on YouTube and I follow along, which is really nice. The other nice thing now is when we look at like Walmart or Dollarama, they have like a fairly decent exercise section in terms of, weights or resistance bands that you can get. You don't have to have heavy dumbbells in order to build muscle. You can do a lot of it, especially if you're getting started with resistance bands. And I do have workouts on my YouTube that you can do with just resistance bands. I'm always cueing to use resistance bands, use body weight, or to use dumbbells. And I show how to use each of those individual pieces of equipment in order to do the same workout. So you don't really need to leave the house to go to the gym. All you need is a
Oh,
space
that's good.
for a yoga mat. That's the only thing I say. If you could roll a yoga mat there in a hallway, in front of your coffee table, behind your desk, if you can fit a yoga mat there, that's all the space you need in order to get a little workout in. And if it comes down to time, exercise snacks. Find 3 or 4 10-minute intervals throughout the day. Maybe when you wake up, you do a little stretching. Then maybe you do a little strength at lunch, just 10 minutes of squats or lunges or push-ups or whatever you can do. And then you take another 10 minutes at the end of the day in order to maybe stretch or go for an after dinner walk. But if I look at that 3 10-minute intervals that I fit into my day, that's a 30-minute workout. And that counts.
I never thought of that. It's so simple and so efficient. But yeah, it's hard for me because I solo parent in the morning. My partner has a job that requires him to be at work very early. And so, getting up, getting everything ready for my child, getting him to school, coming back, walking the dog, and then starting work. And where do I fit in those 45 minutes of gym? So that's very, very helpful
Well,
to
in
know
that
that you can kind of break it down in small chunks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in that morning routine that you said you have when you're solo parenting, you don't have time to exercise, you did mention walking the dog. So there's
Yeah.
that's an exercise snack right
Yeah.
there. You already have one of them
That's true.
in your
Yeah.
day, right? That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Except when it's minus 35, like it's been over the past couple of weeks. I
De-
just can't get myself to go outside. But
yeah, definitely
yeah.
makes it more challenging for sure.
Yeah. So many women were taught to approach food through fear, even without an eating disorder, like counting calories, avoiding certain foods, feeling anxious around food, dieting. I can relate to that. I grew up thinking that bread was bad, that carbs were bad in general. And, bread is a really big deal in France. I was
Yes, it
avoiding
is.
it, restricting it, fearing it. It became this food noise in my head that I couldn't stop hearing. So, how do we get out of these patterns that essentially society has created for women?
I think that knowledge is power, and
Okay.
being educated on what our food does for us is really important. So we're not going to leave Ottawa and drive to Toronto, which is 4 hours for those of you who don't know, with an empty tank of gas. The same way we shouldn't wake up in the morning and start our day without any fuel in our system. I know I'm even someone who doesn't enjoy eating first thing in the morning. I don't feel hungry, but I know that my body needs fuel. And so I make myself a smoothie and I take that smoothie with me on my day. Maybe, if you're dropping your kid off at school, you can have that smoothie in the car with you and start drinking it. But our body needs fuel. Most people need between 1,400 and 1,600 calories per day just to sit on their couch and have their body do what it needs to do. That's how many calories we burn on a daily basis. And when I have women, they have to track a little bit at the beginning. You have to know where you're starting from. Like you can't just say, I'm going to restrict my calories and not knowing how many you're already at. So when I have
Mm.
them write down what they're eating like 1,000 to 1,200 calories a day. And they're eating healthy foods, which is why their calories are so low, but they're not even giving their body enough calories to function in what they need to do. So what's going to happen is our body's going to suppress ovulation because ovulation isn't necessary for survival. So when you're restricting your calories too much, your body goes into what I call hibernation mode, where it stops doing the functions that aren't necessary to maintain life. And so converting fat into energy is not necessary for life, right? So our body's actually going to hoard onto that fat. And so what we need to do is if someone comes in with a low calorie, you have to reverse diet them out of that. So what that means is you have to slowly increase their calories up to the 14 to 1,600 if they're also increasing their exercise. The caloric requirements I write for most of my clients are somewhere between 1,800 and 2,200 calories. And that is for, women that are between 150 and 200 pounds. Where we're in this, well, I need to be under 1,500 calories. Well, you might not need to. You need to see where you're at right now. You need to factor in what does your body need to do its functions? How much exercise are you doing on a daily basis? And then we create the deficit. And that deficit is only going to be 200 to 300 calories per day. The
Mm-hmm.
hard thing for women is that we have a monthly cycle that affects our body weight. In our luteal phase, we're going to retain water. Our body weight is going to go up. It doesn't mean that our body fat went up. What happened, we might feel fluffier, feel more bloated. Well, we're retaining water in our luteal phase. And so when you look at where you're starting, you need almost a month of data because you need to know where your weight is in each part of your cycle. So I don't compare my weight to where it is today to where it was last week. I compare my weight to
Mm.
where I was at this day of my
My
last
God.
cycle. So it's not bad. Don't weigh yourself every day. Please don't weigh yourself every day. You do not need to see that. I weigh myself every Monday morning, first thing in the morning. I wake up, I do my business, I get on the scale, I go about my day, and I fluctuate between 5 and 7 pounds every month. So that's okay. I don't get upset about it because I know that I'm not comparing myself from where I am now to where I was yesterday. I'm comparing it to where I was 28 days ago. I'll use myself as an example here. I recently injured myself, which means I'm not exercising the same amount. I also have a wedding this summer, which means that I don't want to just,
Oh, congratulations.
thank you. I don't want to just keep eating what I'm eating and exercising less because then I'm going to inevitably increase my weight. And as we go into a wedding, that's not what we want to do. And so I took a look at it and I haven't tracked my macros consistently every single day for years. But I did it this past week. And the interesting thing I saw is like, yes, my calories are good, but I eat a lot of charcuterie. A lot of my calories come from fat and a little bit of protein there. And I'm pretty low on my carbohydrates. So taking a week to track gave me, okay, I need to adjust this a little bit. I need to decrease the amount of fat I'm consuming, increase the amount of carbohydrates I'm consuming, but I'm still keeping my calories the same, right? I'm not restricting myself. I'm okay. This is what my body needs to do this with this energy output. And this is how I'm going to maintain it going forward.
Yeah. I really wish that young girls had this kind of education and knowledge, especially as they go through puberty and their body changes and cravings might appear, right? Like with hormonal changes. This would be so valuable to teach early on.
It really would be.
And what you said about weighing yourself earlier was really eye-opening to me. You know how when you try to lose weight and then you don't necessarily weigh yourself every day, but like once a week, and then you start to plateau or like, you gained back what you had lost a week prior, and then you feel terrible about yourself. But then it makes so much sense based on what you just said. Maybe you shouldn't be weighing yourself every week and comparing it week to week, but comparing it phase to phase.
Exactly. And it can be simple as just like, that's where I like tracking it every week, because I don't have to think, okay, did I do this last week or was it the week before? When did I do it? It's just, it's part of my routine. Humans were routine-based creatures. So Monday morning, I step on the scale and that's it. That's where I leave it. And it's data. It's not a report card. It's not a pass or fail. It's data. And so that data just gets logged and we keep it as that. We keep it as just data. And that's where I find people get so fixated on the number. We are in a society that wants instant gratification, right? I want to order something off Amazon and I want it delivered today. I want to lose that weight and I want it gone tomorrow. It's a longer process like that. The reason most people fail it, and I don't even like using the word fail, but it's very...
That's how we feel.
People know it. It's how we feel it, is they try to change too much at one time.
And when you shift your goal from losing weight or maintaining weight to maintaining a healthy lifestyle for your old age, I think that changes the perspective. It has changed for me. Like, I'm less impatient to see results than I used to be when I just wanted to fit in my jeans,
Yeah.
Because that process takes time. And I actually have started listening to my body a whole lot more recently. Hunger cues, emotions, periods are often treated as problems when they're in fact information. What does listening to your body really mean in practical terms beyond the cliche?
Yeah, so it means taking note of how you're feeling. Your mood matters. Your energy levels matter. They're not failures that we have, right? Just because I wake up low energy today, it could be a bad sleep. It could be I'm dealing with something. Maybe I'm going to make sure I get myself a really good fueling breakfast. So instead of turning to coffee, what's going to be an appetite suppressant, and it's going to give you a false sense of energy, I'm actually going to give myself proper fuel. So I'm going to make some oatmeal. I'm going to have some eggs on the side, and I'm going to get a breakfast that's really going to fuel my tank well for the day. And so I listened to it. I took what that data is from my body and I applied it appropriately. And so it goes with all aspects of our life. We touched on this earlier when we said, I'm in my luteal phase and I'm feeling more tired. Well, then turn off your device and go to bed 30 minutes earlier. And so listening to your body means listening to the data. Symptoms that we get as data, and then using our lifestyle habits to support that data for us to do what we need to do. Because we don't have a choice to shut down for 2 days just because I'm on my period. It would be nice if the world went that way, but it's never going to. And so knowing how you can alter your lifestyle habits in order to support that data is really powerful and tends to help women reduce the guilt that we feel of just not being able to perform the same way every single day of the month.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, you can follow wherever you get your podcasts or share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Until next time, be bold, be kind, and don't apologize for holding both. I'm Camille, and this was Kind of Bold.